All right, shalom, shalom. I want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Wakak, Wadash. I want to say double honor to the apostles and the bishop elders of Great Millstone for teaching this word in truth and sincerity and for ruling well. And salutations to my fellow Akim across the four corners of the globe, preaching and prophesying in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Here, my brother Gabar Yahweh from GMS Hawaii, coming to you with another lesson. And this lesson is going to be on head coverings, okay? Particularly the yarmulke, going into the history of that, as well as the mitri, because our forefathers in the ancient world, we didn't wear these kind of head coverings in the ancient world. This is a heathenistic thing that Amalek, the so-called Jew, this is something that he invented. And then not only him, you got the Pope wearing the same thing. The Pope wears a yarmulke too. All right, yeah, yeah. Pope wearing a yarmulke. Yeah, the Pope wears a yarmulke too, or they call it the zucchetto, right? But it's the same thing as this shit. And then you got them Arabs. They call that shit a kufi, you know. But we don't in the ancient world. We didn't wear this. The ancient Israelites didn't wear this, and this doesn't go back to our ancient customs. This is a modern custom of the JJ. All right, they wear these things and them black hats to cover their heads when they're praying. If you type in Jewish man praying, right, you're gonna see their heads always covered. Yep, fold up. And these people claim to be the Lord's people. They reading and probably, so like real quick. Let me get this. This is First Corinthians verse 11. Chapter 11. I'll start at matter of fact, I'll just start at the top. And this is First Corinthians 11:1. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Hamashiach. Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things, and keep the ordinances as I delivered them unto you. But I will have you know that the head of every man is Hamashiach, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Hamashiach is the Most High. Every man praying and prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. All right. Let me read that in a more easy way to read Bibles. In the NLT, it says, "A man dishonors his head if he covers his head while praying or prophesying." Let's look up that word for covering, right? That word for covering, praying and prophesying, having his head covered. The Greek word there is kata. All right. The Greek word there is kata, which is which it says to down from throughout, according to Long against, says a primary particle in a variation of relations with which is joined. So I'm not sure what this word really means, but this is a primary particle, so it just says to down from. But you're not supposed to have your head covered when you praying and prophesying. All right, that's the point, right? And let's see if in another in the NIV it says, "Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head." Right. So going back to this, when we pray and we prophesy, we're not supposed to have our heads covered. You got like uh, other groups out there like Sakari, they wear hats. Majority of them from their leaders on down. Those guys, those brothers or whatever, they wear their heads, have their heads covered, calling themselves prophesying and praying. They ain't the only ones. There's other cats out there too, but they're like the more mainstream, modern ones that do that. You're not supposed to do that when you're praying and prophesying. But yet these men right here call themselves praying, reading the scriptures. I don't know if they call themselves prophesying, but they got their heads covered. And this is not a custom of our forefathers, wearing this. That's why when they make pictures of or movies or the one you even call Jesus Christ named Yahushua, he always got like a hood covering his face or something like that. This is off. This is a Jew man wrapped in a tallit. This is off. You're not supposed to pray to Yahweh Bashem Shai having your head covered. When you prophesy, you ain't supposed to have your head covered. This is not biblical. This is actually going against the Lord. Another sign that these people are not the Lord's people, right? But again, they're not the only ones that do it. You got the Pope, and every time a president or a prospective president goes over to Israel, They put the same thing on. They put uh, the yarmulke on. In the Catholic Church, they call it a zucchetto, right? And again, these people call themselves a religious, God-fearing people, right? So it says the zucchetto versus the yarmulke. There is an exhibit now being displayed in the Braccio de Cario Mango Hall of the Vatican called a blessing to one another, John Paul II and the Jewish people that will be there until September, blah, 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 blah. The second photo of the exhibit shows this Pope. Matter of fact, let me read this. The banner advertising the exhibit shows a picture taken in 1986 of the late Pope John Paul II at the late Chief Rabbi Tov greeting each other inside the main showroom. John Paul was the first Pope in modern history to enter the show. A second photo exhibit shows the Pope in the year 2000 placing a kivet inside the stones of the Kosel. Blah, blah, blah. It says, besides the photograph, John Paul and Tov iconic photo in the exhibit shows Jean Paul placing a written prayer in a crevice between the stones of the western wall in Jerusalem, a site sacred to Jews. It says, but our article focuses upon another aspect of the exhibit. It seems that the skull cap or the zucchetto that Pope Paul II wore on the occasion was also placed in the exhibit alongside a replica of the Kosel now in the Vatican. Indeed, there are reprints of the Pope's kivet that observers are encouraged to place inside, blah, 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 blah. It says, let us focus on a moment of the skull cap or the zucchetto, which literally means skull cap in Italian. And that's all, we're going to show you that all of this shit goes back to the Greeks, you know, all the covering of the wearing of the head covers and shit like that, the hat, even a modern day baseball cap we wear, you know. It says, why do they wear them? The reason why the popes and the cardinals wear them are actually quite different from why Jewish people wear yarmulkes. The zucchetto is worn because it has been a Christian tradition for clergymen to wear them since the dawn of the 13th century. So this is pretty new. So that was like in the 1400s. They started popping them shits on their head. To place that, which it really goes back to Saturn worship. In both of those religions, they do that. Even Islam. It says to place them in their terms of Jewish history, 50 years before the Rosh was born, Christian clergymen started wearing the zucchetto. The custom developed because of extremely cold weather. See, but they wear this shit on a constant basis. These are traditions of men that became rule. You know, it says, it seems that based on a verse in the Christian Bible, it is considered unbecoming for Christians to wear long hair, which Israelites who believe in Yahweh and Israelite men, period, were not to wear long hair. It says, it is considered unbecoming for Christians to wear long hair. Christian clergymen would shave their heads bald to fulfill this verse. So they were going off. The haircut resembled typical male pattern baldness. Oh yeah, he used to cut their hair. A matter of fact, I don't know if you brothers familiar with what is it? A medieval monks, right? Medieval monks or whatever. Not what is it? Medieval monks, medieval clergymen, right? You used to see them on the cartoons and shit. That ain't it, Salakia. Medieval clergy monks would shave their heads in the middle of their heads, right? And so because it got cold, these idiots put a hat on their head, and they were trying to feign piousness, right? That's what they were doing. They were trying to feign piousness, you know, when they were all reprobates either way. But let's go back to this. It says, the custom developed because of extremely cold weather. It seems that based on a verse in the Christian Bible, it is considered unbecoming for Christians to wear long hair. Christian clergymen would shave their heads bald to fulfill this verse. The haircut resembled typical male pattern baldness and was called a tonsure. At a tonsure, I'm just looking it up. So just bear with me. Yeah, this is it right here. This dumbass haircut. You know, this shit is going off too because you ain't supposed to make baldness upon your head. You know, that's part of the law of the Holy Scriptures of the Bible of Yahweh Shem Shai. part of a monk's part of a monk's or priest's head left bare on top, shaving off the hair, right? Which you're not supposed to do. It says to shave the hair on top, a monk's or priest's head, give a tonsure to give a tonsure to. The tonsure is a practice of cutting or shaving some or all of the hair on the scalp as a sign of religious devotion or humility. The terms originated from the Latin word tonsura, referred to specific practice in medieval Catholicism, abandoned by papal order in 1972. So this shit was just abandoned, and I'm sure they still do it, right? So again, that skull cap came because it was cold, and they put that shit on their head. So it says right here, it says the custom developed because of extremely cold weather. It seems that based on a verse in the Christian Bible, it is considered unbecoming for Christians to wear long hair. It says Christian clergymen will have their heads bald to fulfill this verse. The haircut resembled typical male pattern baldness, as and was called a tonsor. At the same time, the traditional cap and hood that everyone wore, called the coat, had lost its hood due to the new fashion design. The zucchetto was created to warm up the clergymen, now mostly bald, in the cold and in the wind blown cathedrals. It says it seems that people who entered into the cathedral did not all enter at one time. The doors of those cathedrals were quite large, and every time they were opened, the clergymen would experience a blast of freezing cold air. The cathedrals had no central heating system, nor any heating system at all. The Zucchetto was clearly a direct result of the bitter cold that these clergymen experienced. Every time the door was opened, current architects had to develop a double door system, as do most or shows. The reason for the yarmulke, on the other hand, or any head, on the other hand, or any head covering for that matter, brings one to fear of heaven. That's crazy, according to the Talmud. So in the Talmud, we know that that's not a book of Yahweh Shem Shai. That's the heathens. That's what Esau uses. That's what these Jays, that's what they venerate most. They don't venerate the Torah, which they claim to believe in. It's the Talmud they believe in. It says the yarmulke, or the other hand, or any head covering for that matter, brings one to fear of heaven. According to the Talmud, Shabbos 156 and 118, indeed, the etymology of the name Yarmalkue, fear of Melech, or in the Aramaic, fear of Melech. The Shina, God's presence, is above us all, and the Yarmulke reminds us constantly of God's presence. Well, you going off. They're going off because you're not supposed to wear that. It says, must it be worn? Rabbi Shlomo, author of Marshashal, writes the wearing of the yarmulke is only a Midas Chadas, or a Plaus act. On the other hand, Rabbi David Taz writes that the reason walking for Amos 7 feet, according to Rav, without the yarmulke is forbidden is that Gentiles used to do this as a sign, Salakia. So all of this shit is just man-made traditions, wearing of the hat, wearing of the yarmulkes. This has no biblical significance to it. And that's the point of me reading through this article right here. Okay? This thing right here is not an ancient Israelite custom. Neither is wearing of any hat on our heads is an Israelite custom. These are really the wearing of the hat is really a heathen thing, and it was introduced to our people via Jason, the high priest. All right, this is Second Maccabees 4:12. For he built gladly. I want to start up. I'll start at 10. Right, it says this is Second Maccabees 4:10, which when the king had granted, he had gotten into his hands the rule forthwith brought his own nation to Greekest. Matter of fact, I want to read up. I gotta read up. Um, I'll start at 7. This is Second Maccabees 4:7. It says, but after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus or Antiochus, called Epiphanes, took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest. So this priest Jason, he wanted to be the high priest. He was the brother of Onias, who was a righteous high priest. But this idiot, he wanted to buy his way into the priesthood because of the role that it would give him, the prestige. He wanted to be the leader, but he also was a sellout. And so he sacrificed his own people's morals and integrity to conform to that of the heathen, right? It says, but after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest, right? Promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Besides this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set him up a place of exercise. So the whole gymnasium, the working out shit, that shit comes from the heathens, particularly the Greeks, and for the training up of the youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochians. So he wanted to change our names from Israelites, and though if you lived in Judea or Jerusalem, that's what you pertain to. But instead of that, he wanted to call us Antiochians, man. So he was the one that brought these heathen fashions into our nation. And this was the beginning of what we call Hellenism. All right. And this is what Paul, all the way up into the New Testament, he had to deal with Israelites that were still reeling from the power of Hellenism. All right. And then they went into Romanism. Right. But Hellenism had great sway over the nations and over our people, you know. So this is why we're called Gentiles. It says in the book of uh what's that, First Corinthians chapter 12. 1 Corinthians 12. Yep, 1 Corinthians 12 and 1, right? It says now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. So what made us Gentiles? Following after those idols. And those idols bring customs. It says right here in the NLT, you know that when you were still pagans, you were led astray and swept along in worshiping speechless idols. And that's what made us Gentiles. That's what made us separate from the commonwealth of Israel, who were worshiping the Most High, supposedly, right? But they still were sneaking in Romanism too. And they still had Greek Hellenistic ways and customs too. But for the most part, those that lived in Judea had to follow the law, statutes, and commandments. It says, you know that when you were still, Salakia, I'm just looking up that word for Gentiles, because this is a word that's commonly used by Christians today. Yep, goes back to the word ethnos, right? So the Greek word there is ethnos, right? And it says a multitude of beasts or associated or living together, a company of troop, a multitude, is the point, a multitude of individuals of the same nature or genus. So that's what we were. And it says in the Old Testament, foreign nations not worshiping the true God, pagan Gentiles, which our people became pagan Gentiles because they stopped worshiping Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, and they started worshiping idols. So that's what made us Gentiles. And when you worship these idols, you take on their customs, the nakedness, the wickedness, the evil, all that shit came along with it. So let's keep on reading right here back in Second Maccabees. It says, Besides this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set him up a place of exercise for the training up of use in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the same name of Antiochians. Verse 10, which when the king had granted, he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashions. So the wearing of the hat, that's a part of the Greekish fashions, all right? Those customs, right? So it says, and the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid. He took away and putting down the governments which were according to the law. He brought up new customs against the law. Again, we're talking about the wearing the customs of the hat. We're going to get into it even more. I'm trying to make this concise as possible. But you got to know that The whole wearing of the hat thing, that shit is Greekish. It's Greekish fashion. It's the custom that's against the law because we're not supposed to have our heads covered, right? We brought that out, especially when we prophesying and praying, all right? And it says he brought upon a new customs against the law, right? Verse 12, just the point. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself and brought the chief young men under subjection and made them wear a hat. Now, what hat did he make them wear? Well, it's called, I looked up a couple of things. I looked up where the yarmulke came from. It says, where did the yarmulke come from? The practice of wearing a yarmulke or a kippah is an ancient tradition that has roots in the Midas Judas, an act of piety before becoming accepted as normative practice by Jewish men and boys. There are a number of references to practice in the Talmud, but it ain't in the Bible. And the Talmud ain't the word of the Most High, right? Then I also typed in, why do Jews wear yarmulkes? No religious text requires Jewish males to cover their heads in a certain way. Wearing a yarmulke or a kippah is a custom now. This shit is now, but this is associated with so-called Jews, man. And you got them in the army. You got a Jewish woman, a so-called Jewish woman wearing a yarmulke, man. You know what I'm saying? This shit is off. You know, this shit is hella off, man. It says, that's why we know that these people are not the Lord's people, man. It says, no religious text requires Jewish males to cover their heads in a certain way. Wearing a yarmulke or a kippah is a custom now. Synagogues, Jewish religious buildings, ask that all men wear yarmulkes as they enter. Legend says that the custom of wearing a kippah shows awareness to someone above, watches everything, which they don't even praise the Lord's name. They don't even reverence Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, right? They don't even know the Lord's name, but see, they say they wear that because that's in reverence to someone above, watches everything. It's wicked. All right. Now it says, did the ancient Israelites wear yarmulkes? Right. It says head coverings in an ancient Israelite culture. The Israelites might have worn a headdress similar to that worn by Bedouins, but it is unknown whether it was a fixed type of headdress was used, and it wasn't. All right. And then they put the kippah right here, which we just went into that. We didn't wear that. We had something called turbans. Now I found this video of the elder, Bishop Elder Sakaran from a minute ago. I remember this video, and it's a tutorial how to wear a mitri, because that's what we wore, was a mitri. All right, we didn't wear turbans. A turban and a mitri are two different things. You know, the turban thing that covers your whole head and whatnot, and we didn't wear that. So I'm gonna play a little bit of this. All right.
The Arabs use cover our heads. I believe it's Matzamta. That's what the high priest and the white Mitri. You can look that word up. I believe it's Matzamta. We didn't cover our heads completely. Whereas a turban that the Arabs use, all right, the Arab sheiks use, they use turbans. They use things that cover their heads completely, all right, and that's a tradition that the nations have, the other, the heathen have. For example, the Arabic nations. But the Israelites wore what is called a mini tree, and you wrap it around your head, and you will leave the top of it exposed. Okay, and the reason for that is 1 Corinthians the 11th chapter. All right, and it explains to you how that when you're praying, and when you're praying to the Lord, you are not to dishonor your head, and our head is Yahweh Shai, by praying unto Him with your head covered. That's why if you're teaching, if you're prophesying, let's say you're out in camp, you're in an area where it's cold, okay, and you're on the side, you're holding posts or something, right? It's alright for you to have a small cap on or something on to a hood, to keep yourself warm or whatever. But once you start to read and once you start to speak, All right, that is the equivalent of prophesying, or that is prophesying. And for praying, you're supposed to have your head covered because our head where the Lord sends His Holy Signal to.
Yep.
That's why babies, when they're young, they have something called what? They have something called a soft spot. All right, and you're supposed to be careful with that soft spot to make sure you don't damage the baby there or hit the baby there because you can kill the baby. All right, now so the spirit dwells within your brain. Okay, that's what controls your whole body. You can get injured, all right, and you can chop your arm off, chop the leg off, you won't die. Decapitate yourself, and what happens, right? You lose your life instantly. Now you chop.
Yeah, so that's like like the bishop elder was saying. The reason why we didn't cover our heads because we're just if you cover your head praying and prophesying, you dishonoring Yahweh Shai, who was our head, and his head is the Most High. So by default, we'd be dishonoring the Father and the Son. So we didn't do that, right? This was introduced to our people, and it was a fashion that was introduced to our people during the time of Jason, all right, okay, who was a piece of crap. All right. So I looked up, what kind of hats did the Greeks wear, all right? And then I found this right here. It's called a petasos, right? A petasos or petasus in Latin is a broad brim hat of the Thessalians origin, worn by ancient Greeks, the Thracians and Etruscans, by the Greeks, Thracians, and Etruscans, often in combination with the uh, climbers cape with a cape. It was made of wool, felt, leather, straw, and animal skin. Women's versions had a high crown, while those for the men featured a lower crown. It says it was worn primarily by farmers, travelers, and hunters, and was considered characteristic of rural peoples. As a winged hat, it became the symbol of Hermes in Greek mythology. Again, these are the heathenistic cultures. See, so when you think that I'm just wearing a hat, I'm covering my head. Is if it's cold, whatever, it's hot, you're trying to keep the heat off. We understand these things, but even it's simple now. It's simple now, but back then it was idolatry, and it's still idolatry. It's simple to us, but it's really still idolatry because that's what it represents. You may not think that a lot of shit that we wear has idolatrous significance to it, and it's crazy because instead of having a two brim now that you got the one. So if you cover that, that's a baseball cap. If you cover the back of this brim up, it's a baseball cap. The modern day version of this is a baseball cap, right? Which Sakari and their members they like to wear, a baseball cap, right? Right? Yeah, that's the modern version of this. Is this right here? These baseball caps is a modern version of a Petasos, right? And you see that, So it says as a winged hat, it became the symbol of Hermes, the Greek of symbol of Hermes, the Greek mythological messenger of God. You see, and they had those hats that brimmed hat on, right, with the micro penis. Um, it says it says it is wide brim protected the wearer from the sun and the rain, while a lengthy strap allowed wearers to secure it under the chin. The popularity later extended to the Etruscans, the Byzantine Empire, and the Roman Empire. You see, and our people got caught up in that. It says in slightly modified forms. A tight metal helmet worn by the Athenian cavalry was made the shape of a petasus, and for some examples have holes around the outer edge of the brim, presumably so fabric cover could be attached. These are known as reliefs and paintings, and they got them right here. The different Greek versions of the hat or the petasus, right? You got Hermes right here. He's wearing it, you know. And then Jake wore. They still got these hats today. The cowboy hat represents this, you know. Is a The cowboy hat is a more uh, um, similar version than a baseball cap, but it's the same shit, right? And this is all heathenistic culture. Then I looked up, they also got something called a pilus, right? It says, was a brimless felt cap worn by ancient Greek, Etruria, Illyria, and Pannonia, later also introduced in ancient Rome. The pilus also appears uh, on Apollon red figure pottery. The pilus, together with the Petasos, which we just read, were the most common types of hats in archaic and classical era from the 8th to the 4th century Greece. In the 5th century BC, bronze versions began to appear in ancient Greece and became popular infantry helmet. It occasionally had a horsehair crest. The Greek pilus resembles the Roman and Etruscan pilus, which were typically made of felt. And you see that right here. You see, this is what this man had us wearing. So we know down through this small little bit of research that these hats from the yarmulke, from these hats from the yarmulke to the this thing that what's it called, the Taurus, the Tarius, right? These to that the right here, the Zucchetto, all of this shit is modern day stuff. And these people, when they pray to the whatever God they pray to, they always have their heads covered, you know, because they really praying to Satan. You know, that's who they talking to. They talking to Satan, these other idols, Dagon, and all that shit. You see, I'm switching out hats. This nigga wearing a cowboy hat and shit, man. You got Trump wearing one and shit. When he goes see them some Jays, he gotta wear one. You know, all of these gotta wear unless you a Rothschild, you ain't gotta put it on, right? But these things are not biblical, all right. So I think that was pretty much it. Let me see if I had anything else. Um, I'll read this. Because again, Bishop Elder here brought this out in that video that I showed you. In Zechariah 3 and 5. And I said, let them set a fair mitre upon the head, so they set a fair mitre upon his head. This is Joshua the high priest when he's cleansed, Lord willing, as high priest Ariar, clothed with him garments, and the angel of the Lord stood by. And that's what's going to be set on our heads, and that's what's going to be set on all our heads. We're going to have crowns too, but brothers going to have them mitres, man. you know. And again, the Mitri doesn't have it's not fully covering the head, right? And it's not a hat, and it's not neither is it a turban, but it's a long stretch of fabric. And the Bishop Elder Sakaran, he got one in his hand, and if you watch this, he'll teach you how to put it on and how to wear it. This is a good video. I remember watching this a long time ago. You know, so I just wanted to bring this out, just a little bit of history on our hats, and that they're not biblical, neither are they traditional to the ancient Israelites. So with that, I hope you're edified. With that, I'll say shalom and on to the next.